What if the monster is really the excuse? Today's guest is filmmaker Erich Cannon, the writer and director of His Monster, a folk horror film that blends grief, addiction, folklore, and practical creature effects into something deeply personal and unsettling. In this conversation, we talk about the mythology behind the shoujo, the emotional reality of recovery, the influence of the X-Files, and the hard road of independent filmmaking. This is the Dark Mind Podcast. If you enjoy the show, please support it by subscribing to my YouTube channel. Your support helps keep the dark conversation alive. So without further ado, I give you Erich Cannon. Erich, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining me on this 29th day of March 2026. When I saw the trailer for your film, His Monster, the first thing that struck me was the commitment to practical effects and the way that a rugged coastal wilderness becomes the perfect backdrop for folk horror. The narrative is psychologically agonizing and saturated with creeping dread. So I really enjoyed it and appreciate you taking the time to join me on the show today to discuss it.
I'm so glad to hear that you liked it. Thank you.
My wife as well. Let me just insert that into the mix there.
Oh, that's great. It's important when both enjoy it.
So, just a brief synopsis. The film is about a man named James Streeter, a man whose alcoholism has already cost him his family. When his young daughter is mysteriously swept out to sea, James becomes convinced that a creature is responsible. The people around him chalk it up to grief and denial, the desperate story a broken man tells himself when the truth is too much to carry. But James keeps hunting and people keep dying, and that is where the story takes off. So the creature is based on the mythological shoujo, which is a creature that, from what I understand, offers people drink, specifically sake, I think, and in a way tests the person's moral character by giving the person the opportunity. And I think if they do drink, you're going to have to help me out with this, but I think if they do drink, the way they react to it is sort of a reflection of their moral character. And because it's a monster in the story, I just kind of assumed that's what the actual myth was purported to be. But you actually said in a previous conversation that is more happy-go-lucky. So can you walk us through that myth and what the distinction between coercion and seduction reveals about how you understand the experience of being trapped by your own habits?
Yeah, the shoujo creature comes from mostly Japanese mythology and folklore. It also appears in some Chinese ancient folklore, mostly stories or operas. And in some texts, it's described as a orangutan-like creature with long, flowing red hair, and that it would play and live on the shore and make its own brine wine and antagonize the sailors and get them drunk. And when I saw this, I thought, well, that's great. I'm just going to turn that into something monstrous. I love the idea of it being an antagonistic character, inviting you to drink. um, and and also the antagonistic personality made me think of Woody Woodpecker, and Woody Woodpecker is always just kind of, laughing at you and causing trouble and instigating things. And so I just thought that that was a great personality for a unique monster that comes from actual folklore that hasn't actually been used in pop culture. Very little use of it in pop culture. So this thing that did exist, and now it's kind of my own invention. And so the shoujo monster is something that is antagonizing a weak person, someone who might be already an alcoholic, or someone who might have an addiction problem. And if you are a weak person who is now then cursed with the shoujo, and I don't want to give too much away, but that installation is going to make you far more susceptible to drink. In this case, alcoholism is what I'm exploring here, and the allegory, of course, being that we have our own monsters, we have our own demons that that those with alcoholism or addiction deal with on a daily basis, and those monsters and demons affect those around us, not just ourselves,
Yeah, so when you say antagonize the sailors, just basically kind of tempting them to drink like that one friend you have that's just a troublemaker.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, you can just have one beer, it's fine.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, I just thought that was such a fun idea.
Yeah. I'm kind of jumping ahead here and we'll get to it, but as far as you being recovery in your own recovery circles, did mythological creatures, allegorical things, metaphorical things, did those kind of float around in the rooms like the shoujo?
For myself, like, did I have mythological creatures
Well,
in my
like
rooms?
no, like when I say the rooms, I mean like 12-step meetings. Is that something that floated around in the rooms? People talked about, they would use, mythological creatures as metaphors, stuff like that.
Not specifically did I ever hear. Well, I mean, people did talk about demons a lot, personal demons, or having a demon inside them. Demon was the word that I would hear more often. But I perhaps heard about someone saying that their behavior, they felt like a monster. I think I wouldn't say that I necessarily was listening for that when I was in AA meetings, but now that you ask that question, it's certainly true that you do hear those words quite a bit, those two in particular.
Gotcha. Well, James is chasing a monster, but he's also chasing an explanation he can live with. What drew you most to a man who might actually need the monster to be real?
Yeah, the thing that I often would hear in meetings is sort of the excuse, the the sort of reason that we have to drink. Um, I mean, when I was drinking, that was often an excuse of mine. It was internal, where I felt like, well, this is the only thing that makes me feel better. So that is my reason for needing this. And I thought that James's character having a physical monster as his reason, as his excuse for what actually happens at the beginning of the movie, is not because he was drunk. It's because of the monster. So he can continue drinking with that excuse in his mind. And so, despite the fact that he's the only one who's seen this monster, he very much needs it to be real, especially for his ex-wife, who has also now lost her daughter. He needs to prove it to her. that it was the monster all along and not because of his drinking. And that is so that he doesn't have to give that up. I know that that was true for me. I never wanted to have to give that up. So I just had to keep the reasons true.
In the AA rooms that you went to, did they have the little sayings on the wall like progress, not perfection, easy does it, time takes time? Yeah.
Yeah, it depended on the room. Yeah.
Did you or anybody you know use those as kind of a get out of jail free? Because I mean, it's true, you can't expect to be perfect. You need to slowly make progress. You need to take it easy, because the first thing I did when I came in was just expect perfection to the point where I was just like having a nervous breakdown.
Yeah.
But then there's also that point you can get to where you just keep doing the same thing over and over and just, yeah, I know I did this, I shouldn't have, but progress, not perfection. It's like, no, dude, you literally have been doing the same thing over and over.
Yes. Yes. It reminds me a little bit of the self-help memes that we are often sharing on social media. And it's sort of like that action of posting that phrase is all you need to do to feel better. It's performative in a way too. It's just that constant excuse we keep giving ourselves, permission we keep giving ourselves. Well, I behave this way, and this meme explains it, so I can continue to behave this way.
Yeah.
That's not working on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can say, my higher power forgives me, but that woman's husband's going to shoot you in the face.
Yes, exactly right. Exactly right.
Well, the film itself carries grief, guilt, denial, and what feels like a kind of spiritual drowning. Which of those emotions turned out to be the true engine of the story once you were deep inside making it?
The drowning aspect of it, for sure. I knew that water was going to play a big part of the story, and we had this cabin location that was right next to a river. And one of the things I like in making movies and telling stories and finding the physical locations where we shoot, I like when locations geographically sort of make sense too. And there's this river next to the cabin, and there's a beach on the coast of Oregon called Hug Point, and a river flows from the hill into the ocean. And so that's something that plays into the opening scene of the story. And when we were out there in production, we were just surrounded by water and the sound of water and rain pouring most of the time. And then we were out by the ocean and we're hearing the waves, and we're surrounded by water, and water was a heavy allegory that really revealed itself in the making of the film and in the story development, and just how much you see it in James's character of literally drowning himself in alcohol. And that is somewhat of an obvious allegory in a way, but in this story in particular, and what happens to his daughter and what he is doing to himself, sort of come together, and it becomes more of a story of grief and how he is dealing with it.
Yeah, using the turn of phrase, drowning in grief, diving to the bottom of a bottle, just keeping your head above water, all those ways of expressing things. That's what I was going to ask. Obviously, where you shot it in the woods there is perfect for a horror story, the isolation, the darkness. I was going to ask, did the use of the water and the coast come afterwards, but it sounds like that was the first thing before you started even shooting it.
Yeah, I knew that I wanted to shoot on the Oregon coast. I wanted it to take place in Astoria. After I'd come up with the Oregon coast idea initially, um, it went from there. I thought, okay, I'm going to base this in a town that people at least are familiar with, and also just as a cinephile myself, I like the idea of being a part of the roster of the many movies that have shot in Astoria, Oregon, like Short Circuit and Kindergarten Cop and The Goonies and others like that. And um, so it's a great looking town to shoot in. And so making James's character a fisherman and somebody who's on water all the time as it is, that was just a great backdrop. The Oregon coast has just the biggest trees you've ever seen, and they just can surround you when you get into the forest. And so it's a really unique and special area that's just great for cinema. I've been hearing a lot of people say that the film is beautiful, and a big part of that is because of the locations.
Yeah, it's always interesting to find out where a lot of these movies are shot. Like you just kind of blew my mind right there. I had no idea those movies were shot in that area.
Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah, it's surprising because it's just it's this sneaky little area that big time movie makers were utilizing.
yeah, I live, or not now, but I grew up in a very working class industrial area on the outskirts of Houston. Like I still had a Houston address, but I went to this high school in a very working class industrial area, and that is where Wes Anderson's film Rushmore, the school scenes were shot in.
Yeah.
It was my high school.
Really?
And I was in broadcast journalism and could have been an extra in that film, but I was so much of a screw up in high school that I couldn't show up.
No.
As soon as I got out of school, I wanted to go get into trouble. So
Yeah.
but I mean, like my teacher, Mr. Lewis, him and this other girl are like just right there, big as hell in the theater watching whatever play they were putting on in that movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but oh man, that's got to be fun to be like, that's my high school when you're watching that movie.
Uh-huh.
I love things like that. That's what's fun about making movies on location and not on a green screen or whatever.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Lewis. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I fucked that
up. But look at him now, Mr. Lewis.
I broadcast journalism. I learned something.
Yes. You're doing a great, fantastic job. And he should know this. He should know it, Mr. Lewis.
Hell yeah. I'm going to find him online and send him a link.
Send him a link. We talked about you today.
Yeah. Well, your practical creature effects connect directly to the Jim Henson legacy through sculptor Scott Foster. What does a tangible physical mask in the room demand from an actor that a green screen simply cannot?
Oh man, yeah, the costume was something else. I originally had planned, to have an actor wearing it. Gabe, who plays James, he wore it a few times when we first started shooting, and then it just became too difficult to try to shoot him and the monster and the back and forth. And so I ended up getting into the suit and played the monster in a lot of the scenes, actually, which was both fun but also really hard. It was very claustrophobic to wear the mask and really hot, and so doing anything in it was exhausting, and then doing it again and again. But what was really fun for me, being a big Jim Henson fan, lifelong fan of his work, was doing puppeteering with the monster. And so a lot of the times I ended up just taking this mask off and operating it like a puppet with the hand and everything. And that was so much fun for me to do. And so there was a slight Jim Henson connection to the making of the mask and the creature. When I met Scott Foster, who is a sculptor out of Portland, uh, he had told me that he worked on a project with Toby Froud, who is Brian Froud's son. And Brian Froud did the designs for Labyrinth and the Dark Crystal characters for Jim Henson. Um, and Toby Froud is also the baby in Labyrinth. And so he thought of Toby when I was reaching out, and then decided, well, I could probably do this myself. I guess he and Toby had worked on some kind of small project that was a precursor to what ended up being the Netflix Dark Crystal series, which was all practical effects. And so when I heard this from Scott, I was like, okay, you are my guy, because that, is exciting to me, just even a morsel of a connection. And I sent him some inspirational pictures. A lot of them were characters from Labyrinth or Dark Crystal, or even some Muppet designs, and some other like designs and drawings of the shoujo from folklore, just to sort of emulate the red and the long hair. And he made this great looking creature with these crescent moon type horns. And then the only VFX that we added to it was having Mark Svetkovich, who's based out of Seattle. He enhanced the eyes and some of the mouth movements and things like that. But everything else was practical effects.
Nice. And this might not be an easy thing to answer, quickly, so we don't have to get off into the weeds. But when you talked about you being in the suit, like, how do you direct when you're on camera? I've always wondered that, like somebody that stars in a movie or has quite a few scenes in a movie, like Tarantino, for instance. How are you in a scene, but at the same time directing?
Yeah, I can answer that from what I've heard from other directors who have starred in their own films. I work with an actor and director, Meekish Nichols, and he wrote and directed a film called Mountainside, and he is the star of Mountainside. And essentially what you have to do as a director is trust your first AD and your director of photography. And if you don't have the luxury of time, you might not get to watch the shot that you're in. But you can ask your DP and say, did we get that? And if you trust your DP and he says yes, or they say yes, then you can move forward. If they say, let's do it again, or, you take the moment to look at it. But oftentimes in indie filmmaking and in that situation, you don't have a lot of time. So you've got to just trust and keep going. And it's also probably not in your favor if you're the actor and director to watch your takes over and over and start scrutinizing yourself. You just kind of have to feel it and go. And some, do a really good job of that. And some, it shows that maybe they should have had someone directing them rather than taking on so much. It wasn't my intention. It happened, partway through the production, but wearing the monster costume, and then I would have to take the thing off and sort of direct people in the costume. So that was kind of a fun way of doing things. I think people would tend to listen to me better if I'm wearing the monster costume and saying, move that light that way. Otherwise.
Yeah, it seems like it would be hard to direct and edit, but it seems like it would be really hard to act, direct, and then edit, because like you're trying to kill your darlings, and one of your darlings is a scene that you're in,
Yeah, my words, my beautiful words. I can't cut them. But this movie is 4 hours long.
Man, I nailed it in this scene. It's just the lighting sucked.
Yeah.
But it was overshone by my brilliant acting.
Exactly.
Well, the film score is inspired by the mood of Mark Snow's X-Files work. How do you translate a feeling from one medium into another? And what specifically did Snow teach you about the architecture of dread?
Oh yeah, I'm so glad that you asked about the music. It's just one of my favorite things in cinema is score and how score is utilized. And I'm also of benefit of having a brother, William Cannon, who studied film composing and is quite talented at writing film score himself, and was inspired by people like Danny Elfman and Mark Snow, who you mentioned. And we're both big fans of The X-Files. And The X-Files in particular, for myself, was something that I drew inspiration from in doing this story. One of the first things I thought to myself was, what if I wrote an X-File without Mulder and Scully? You know, what if this was something that was in Mulder's filing cabinet? And I was watching a lot of X-Files too at the time. And one of the things I just loved about every single episode was it always started with this music. It always started with this. You just knew how to feel and what to expect by the tone and the visual in the first second. And that's just one of the things I loved about Mark Snow's score. And he used a lot of synth. This was the 90s, but it was warm synth, and it was dark, this darker sort of atmospheric tone that had melody at the same time. And there's just something about that that creates it creates an emotional response while also being in the background, which is also important when you're doing score. I think if nobody mentions the music, then the music did its job. If anyone says, "Oh, I hated the music," then that means it was annoying and it was in the way of the story. So one of the things that I remember in putting it together was I wanted so much music, but realizing that you need to sort of pull back in moments too. And there are times in the X-Files where music isn't happening because they don't want to tell you how to feel, that you need to be scared because you're about to be scared. And so that was really it was really fun to collaborate with William and work on that, because at times where I wanted music, he would say, "No, I don't think you do." And
I don't think
even
do.
though yeah, even though I thought, well, don't you want to write more and more music and have all the music here? And so, I think directors often have the challenge of music and how to incorporate music and doing it correctly. And this one, I think, personally, I think it just turned out exactly as I wanted. It sounds, as I said, atmospheric and melodic, and not just scary tones, because this isn't just a story about a monster. It's also a story about grief.
Yeah. Have you ever heard the X-Files just played on a normal piano, no synth?
Just like somebody playing the score, the theme song. I probably have, yeah, heard something like that.
Yeah, I wish I could play it. It's goddamn copyright, but yeah, it sounds really cool.
Well, I could probably go and ask my brother to play it for me on his piano.
I don't think it matters. I think they can still detect if somebody's playing it. They'll hit it with copyright. Yeah.
Right.
Well, circling back to the film, and correct me if I'm wrong, you shot the entire film in 20 days?
That's correct. Yeah, 20 days. Yeah, 15 on the main production and then another 5 second unit.
So what does that kind of compression actually do to an actor's emotional performance? Does it help or does it hinder?
It probably is more hindering, I think, because you sort of have to keep the character with you. There are some talent that don't let go of a character until it's completed. Some can go in and out. I think, I don't want to speak for Gabe, but he and I have talked about this a bit, where the character is very angry and sullen, and so even when we weren't filming, there were times where Gabe seemed angry and sullen, but it was just keeping that character going and being prepared for when he would be working. And so then it wasn't necessarily what we had in mind, but then a few months later, it's sort of like, okay, now you have to bring all that back, which probably would have been better if it was in the moment and continued to carry through the production and to the end, but not uncommon. So actors and talent do have to deal with that on a regular basis with these kind of projects, sometimes going from one project to the other and then back again. Even while we were shooting, I remember Gabe did an audition for something, and he was learning all new lines for a totally different character to do a read and send off. And I thought, wow, that's got to be a little challenging to sort of take that moment, disappear one character, bring in a new one, disappear that one. So I think it's all part of the work.
Mm-hmm. Well, several reviews have called the ending intentionally ambiguous, and divisive is kind of a strong word, not in a derogatory way. Just, a lot of people have diametrically opposed views. How would you describe your own intentions for what stays with an audience after the final frame?
I don't mind divisive if people end up debating and discussing. You've really hit to the core of something, and that's always interesting to me. The ambiguity, I would say, is something that is derived from the X-Files also, where a lot of these cases that they're investigating don't necessarily get solved per se. The mythology continues. In a lot of cases with X-Files episodes, the monster is still out there, and the file just goes back into the drawer.
The truth is out
there. Exactly right. And so I also wanted the opportunity, if I were to have it, to continue and tell another story. I think that there is, more shoujo stories you could tell, and whether or not they involve some of the same characters, I think could also happen. And so I think that for me, I wanted to leave just a little bit of a door open, for more stories. And, as I said, so that sort of X-File truth being still out there.
Gotcha. Well, we've mentioned your own experience and my experience as well, with, addiction recovery. In your screenings, have you noticed a difference between how people who've lived with addiction interpret that ending as opposed to those who haven't?
Yes, definitely. I think an understanding of things often just comes from experience. And I think you and I probably both know from our own recovery that there can be a bias of alcoholism or the struggle of addiction, that it is something that you should be able to just handle on your own. So many others can just have one drink and stop. Why is it such a problem for you? That for sure. I've had a lot of people come and approach me either with someone that they've known or their own experience. And it's great when people come and tell me that they are also sober or have been for a number of years. And then there are those who have approached me with their own current struggles, and they asked me with their being very curious how I was able to stop. And there have been some who saw the film and they felt it to their core that it was about them, but they were trying to describe it to me as like it didn't feel like any kind of attack. It just felt just so sort of raw and right in front of him, that this was, he was sort of seeing himself, and that it was really helpful to see in such a hard way. And I hadn't heard that, I hadn't heard that from another person's perspective that might be struggling with that before. I only had considered my own self, which was the process of making it and writing it and doing it was cathartic, and putting it out there was a release for me. When I watch it, there's a lot of myself there, but when I watch it, I don't feel, it doesn't feel hard for me to watch in that sense. Like I'm not hard on myself when I watch it. And now I'm realizing, like, somebody who's struggling with addiction, it could be hard to watch, but despite that, they're receiving the right message.
Gotcha. And so the theatrical run of this film has coincided with your own sobriety anniversary, which was when again?
On March 10th, celebrated 6 years.
All right, I'm going to give you a... There we go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Let it breathe. Just let it... There we go. Keep it on going.
Oh, they really love it.
My studio audience is very upbeat and
They're
really encouraging.
Incredibly enthusiastic.
But they listen. They do what I say. So
you've got a lot of power here.
I do. I still have control issues. So just out of curiosity, when it comes to emotional sobriety, which maybe some people that aren't in recovery don't understand, it's like, yeah, you quit drinking and then you find out why you were drinking. You find out all these emotional hangups you had. But with regard to that, I was always told, they had like a joke. They would say somewhere around 5 years, you'll hear this loud popping noise and it's your head coming out of your ass. So have you had any aha moments or any epiphanies kind of around this time as far as your own emotional sobriety, the way you relate to people and so on?
Yeah, what I did, it was a year into my sobriety, I just decided to start a business and dive into the goal of making films like I always wanted to. And I think that was my way of sort of retreating into this shell, and I was hyper focused on work entirely, and I just completely closed out social relationships, and I was only working with the film crew and the people involved in my projects and nothing more. And I think part of that was sort of avoiding anything related to the times in which I was drinking or any of the people that were around me when I was. It took me a number of years to realize that that's something that I do a lot, is hide and retreat and be a homebody. And those feelings were bringing me down, and they were making me depressed and exasperating loneliness. And the outlet in the past to that was the release of drinking. And I could drink something and then boom, I could get out and be social and start hanging out with people. And I felt like for a long time, I felt like I had to have that to be social and be with people. What has been great since I sort of realized that I was retreating, I've come out, I'm resurfacing, and I'm putting myself out there. And I guess in some ways, You could a fun way of saying it is I'm getting drunk off of the validation of the work, and also though of just connecting with people. I've just been putting myself out there, being less involved in social media connection, more involved in community connection, and that has been really great for me personally, and emotionally. And it's really been feeding a positive and happy spirit, whereas the retreating and the loneliness certainly was not. And it's sort of like, yeah, you sort of need to find that it's not at the bottom of the bottle. It's out there. It's people. It's family. It's friends. It's sunshine. And it's effort too. And you have to be in control of that effort. You want so badly for people to invite you out. Well, no, go out yourself, and not to the bars, but go out yourself to the to the art gallery or the movie, which I was going to lead to, which was part of why I wanted to go out onto the road, was because I wanted to connect directly to the audience that was going to come see the film. And I was going to be there, and I was going to do Q&A, and I was going to put it in theaters, and we can all come and sit together and share. And that for me was putting myself into what could have been, or previously was, an uncomfortable space for me. And it was just great. It was just great. And I never needed a drink to do it.
Yeah, for the longest time, I mean, I still technically do what you're talking about as far as isolating, but my day job that I had, I was able to isolate. Even though I had to be around people, I could still stay in a pocket, but I had to retire from that job. And so now I'm teaching. And man, I did not realize what an introvert I was. Like, some days are 10 hours. Teaching, like, that's enough to exhaust somebody, but man, just the mental drain, like, it's been so long, like my socialization muscles are so atrophied.
Yeah. And that's totally fair too. After these theatrical showings I felt pretty exhausted from doing all the talking and talking to all the different people. But it only, I just needed to sort of rest the next day, and then I got right back into it again. I guess it's just sort of that, having that awareness of knowing that something like that is going to tax you in a certain way, and just being prepared for how to recoup from that in a healthy way and then bounce right back. But that's pretty great that you're now teaching.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't something that I aspired to. It's something that I kind of fell into when I retired from my other job, because mental and physical health was going to hell. So I'm glad I kind of ended up there, because it's going to be good for me, I'm sure.
Yeah, good.
So anyway, enough about me. So before His Monster, you had a film called Braving Rapids.
Braving Rapids, yeah.
You worked as a PA, I think, on sets.
So yeah, I directed Braving Rapids a couple of years ago. That's a family adventure film that was written by Kim Hornsby, and that's a fun one. Totally not horror. And more of physical locations and using actual animals and working with kids. And I really wanted that one to feel like one of those Disney Saturday afternoon specials that I grew up watching. Like I don't know if you ever saw those Benji movies, or like Benji the Hunted in particular, or the film The Bear. The cast of those movies are entirely animals, real animals, and they're telling a story, and it all edits together, and it's really incredible.
Yeah.
I think anybody that made a movie entirely with animals is
Do they
is incredibly talented.
do they get their own trailers?
Yeah, they got their own cages probably
Oh
back in
yeah.
those days.
Oh
How
yeah.
they made films with animals,
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah, I started in my film career as a production assistant, which is the best kind of film school, really, if you're lucky enough to end up with a job like that. You're sort of in the heartbeat of production. And a friend of mine, who I still work with, Nathan Lee, who was a big part of His Monster, he was working as a camera assistant and got me a job as a production assistant on this sci-fi channel movie called Age of the Dragons, starring Danny Glover. And that was the first movie I ever worked on. And it was so much fun as a wide-eyed young up and coming filmmaker to be there. And the second job, and this is really, I feel lucky in a sense because it's not always easy to break into the film industry. But the second job I got was working in the production office of 127 Hours. And that was with one of my all-time favorite directors, Danny Boyle. And here I was, just sort of, I stumbled into this amazing job in which I'm working with Danny Boyle every day and seeing them make this incredible film that would later get nominated for Best Picture. That was just an incredible way to sort of understand how movies are made and movies work, and the work that goes on behind the scenes that you never really think about, with the paperwork and the equipment and the people and the everything that's involved. And so, yeah, that was just a really great experience for me to do jobs like that, and then jump into producing commercials and producing short films and eventually features, and then directing my own.
So once you got to directing your own, how did spending that time as a production assistant kind of influence the way you treated your own crew and cast?
Oh, yeah. There's a reason I call my company Compassionate Disaster Films.
Oh, nice.
If you ever worked on set before, you really experience a lot of ego and a lot of assholes and this hierarchy that's sort of built in. And I was kind of amazed by the amount of jerks you really run into, who are your bosses. And I thought to myself, gosh, whenever I get the opportunity to be in charge, I will not treat people like this. I will treat people with kindness. I think that if you're on a movie set, you should be having so much fun. The work, of course, is the work. The work is hard, but you should have felt like you had a great day doing it. And I remember showing up on set as a production assistant and coming in the morning and seeing my coworkers, and I would say, "Good morning." And they would not respond, or they would just grumble something. And I would think there's something wrong. There's something wrong with that. Production assistant work is really hard. You have to say yes to everything and do everything. But I just kept reminding myself, like, this is for the movies. And so it was fun for me. Eventually it gets really taxing and exhausting, and knowing just how taxing and exhausting it is, and knowing how, or what the attitude of a production assistant is. When I was a producer and I was a director, I would show that production assistant that I had that sort of grace and kindness and understanding, and make sure that they're getting their rest, and make sure they're drinking their water, and make sure they're having a good time, and letting them ask me questions. There's these weird rules in the industry. If you're a PA, you can't ever sit down. If you're a PA, you can't talk to the director. You can't look an actress in the eyes. It's just, if that's going on, I don't want to be a part of that. So I love when PAs want to chat with me and ask for advice. And I've had a few even say, like, Eric, I don't know how you're managing all of this, but it's been really cool that you always take the time to talk to me. And I'm so glad to hear that, because it's like, well, that's the point. So I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, and I do encourage up and coming filmmakers that are going to film school or not, find your way into being a production assistant. Even if your first job you don't get paid, you will learn so much on that first set that you're on, and you could just go from there.
Yeah, you can sit in class all day, but jump into the actual making of a film. I mean, there's no comparison, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You learn so much theory in film school, but you'll never know what a C stand is.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's strange to me how many hours that everybody really puts in. Because when you think about making the movies, you think about fluff and glamour, and it's real easy to forget like how many hours. Even actors that have their own trailer and makeup and people bringing them stuff still, have to put in a hell of a lot of work. Like I had a friend actually from AA who did props for the Houston Grand Opera. And he was telling me that they used to be able to work them an insane amount of hours. I can't remember what it was, but their union put a cap on it after one of the members had been working some insane amount of hours and fell asleep at the wheel on the way home and died.
Yeah. That is unfortunately a common story. And there are groups that have really been pushing for, regular work hours in the film industry. It is a little strange that standard, for whatever reason, is a 12-hour or more day. And a lot of that has to do with saving money. And I myself, tried very hard to keep my production days under 12 hours. And at times I can keep production days at 10 hours. And I always try to do that because it's just so much more realistic to work something reasonable like 10 and get rest, because rest actually plays so much into the quality of the outcome of your film. If your crew is exhausted, how good is that prop going to look? Because they were up until 2 a.m. trying to make it, in time. It's just you have to know, and I think that comes from just experience, but you just have to know what things are going to cost and what time it's going to take and budget accordingly, and you'll be successful, and everyone will not be tired and hate you at the end. I can't say that's always been true for me. It's always been a learning process over the years, but the more you do it, the better you get.
Well, from what I understand, you discovered a band called Phantogram. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Yes.
Back when they were unknown on MySpace, which I haven't heard that word in years. And I guess based on the potential you saw in them, you were able to connect them to a label?
That's right. Yeah, that was another life for me. I almost got myself into the music career before I went back to my original passion of film and video. But I had been working as a music promoter living in Portland, and part of my job was to get on MySpace and seek out some unrepresented bands that might need some help in promotion or whatnot. And we were doing radio and tour promo. And at the time they were called Charlie Everywhere, and they had their track that they're now famous for, Mouthful of Diamonds, on their MySpace page. And I heard that track and I was like, this is really good. Like, this should be on the radio. I'm going to reach out and see. And they were writing and recording that first record, and they were unknown, and they were looking for a label and looking for promotion. And I introduced them to a label that I worked with and knew guys at in Seattle called Barsook Records, who put out Death Cab for Cutie, for example.
Oh.
And they really liked the Phantogram record, and offered them a contract and signed them, and the rest is history. And it's really cool because it's sort of my one and only little music claim to fame, before I stopped doing the music career track. But lucky enough for me, I still have a relationship with Phantogram. They're still friends of mine, and I've done video work for them, which is really a lot of fun, to have had that opportunity. And their success I'm so proud of, because they're hard workers, and they got to where they're at now because of their work ethic and always saying yes, and knowing what it takes. And it's hard to do in this industry, really hard to do.
What's that saying? Luck is when hard work meets opportunity. Something like
Yeah,
that. I think I've got it wrong.
something,
Something like that. Yeah.
but it sounds right. Yeah, a lot of people talk about that idea of making your own luck. And when you are lucky is not because you just sat there and waited. You are lucky because you took some kind of action.
How did that experience of spotting an artist before the rest of the industry did affect your trust in your own instincts when you're casting or choosing a collaborator? Like the fact that you're like, they're going to succeed. And sure enough, I was right.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a high confidence in my finger on the pulse of pop culture and popularity. But I do feel confident that I have a good eye, that I have a good ear, and I've studied film and television so much over the years that I'm realizing more and more how inherent it's become within me in a way, because it's just something that I've just absorbed so much of. I thought about this recently because I got a question during one of the Q&As of the edit of his monster, and how I might have changed things from what I was doing in production. And I told him that I made a lot of changes in the edit from what I was originally planning with the shoot and the script, but I had the agency to do that because I had written the script, but also because I could see it. Just, I had this visual in my head from the very beginning. And I would come up with my shot list on the day of production, because I knew each visual. It was just all in my head. And that was sort of my blueprint. And I think that comes from just watching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of movies since I was little. And I'm very glad that my parents allowed me to do so. My dad was big into pop culture stuff and really liked collecting records and movies and, videotapes. And so there was always something for us to watch, over and over again. Amazing classics and old westerns and Disney animations and Jim Henson, all right at my fingertips.
Nice.
Before there was streaming, of course, this was videotape, friends.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Physical media.
Yeah, remember that? No. Yeah, that's why I chose this background of physical media behind me.
Oh, hell yeah. That's a shit ton of physical media.
Yeah, that's a big record collection.
My 10-year-old niece, believe it or not, would be stealing stuff. No, not stealing stuff, but she would be jumping
wanting to
up
collect.
and down.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, she's got a small
that's great to
collection.
hear.
She's just started. I actually bought her a Nirvana record. It wasn't like one of the main ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're already getting her Nirvana deep cuts.
Oh, yeah. It took me by surprise. I just, they live about 3.5 hours away. So we took a road trip one day and she showed up at the door wearing the old black and white Misfits shirt. Who are you? This is me.
That's cool though. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, as you do this tour with his monster, you're also teasing a film called The Cuckoo Clock that you're producing with Lisa J. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Lisa J is the writer director of The Cuckoo Clock. She's someone I known for a number of years in the filmmaker circles, and someone who has uh, got plenty of accolades for her writing in horror over the years, but never had anything produced. And I always thought that was a shame. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be exciting if I was the first one to produce one of her films? And lo and behold, that opportunity came around, and I gave her the opportunity to also direct it. And I think it turned out beautiful. I'm really excited for people to see it. And delve more into releasing horror with practical effects and monsters.
Hell yeah.
And other people's visions, not just my own.
Nice. Well, you have a bit of a DIY approach to production and distribution, which, from what I understand, was born out of some bad deals you were unfortunately subjected to. Does that hard-won pragmatism ever pull against the more intuitive or romantic parts of how you think about storytelling?
Yeah, I never got into filmmaking to become a businessman.
Hey there, I got something for you.
Yeah, exactly. I got to do business now.
Yeah,
When
see?
I just want to paint. But that's the thing that sort of happened. You sort of discover as a filmmaker that is an aspect that you sort of are required of now. And for a little while, I found it disappointing. Yes, I felt like it was crushing my creative spirit. Also, a part of that too is just having to have a day job or a side job to supplement the dream, as it was, because it's hard to make independent DIY films and also make a living and pay rent and eat and pay bills and stuff. And that aspect of it was always dispiriting, because you just felt like you didn't have enough time for what your soul really wants to be doing. But I don't know if this is true for everyone, but for me, I just had to fight through that, get through that somehow. I lived in Los Angeles for a number of years, and it has a way of really kicking you down to the ground, but I just found myself getting right back up and having that tenacity. So now I am in more of a place where I can feed my creative soul again, which has been really helpful. And taking things into my own hands, over the years, I've worked with a lot of different distributors and talked to a lot of different filmmakers like myself who have distributed independently and have been either screwed over or immensely disappointed in the return of investment. And when it comes to the fact that we're making feature films, they should be lucrative in some sense. And it's just kind of incredible when you see and hear about so many failures, and you wonder, well, why is that happening? And as it turns out, there became this abundance of available distributors who would take your film and add it to their library and make just enough money for them to keep in business, but the filmmakers would make nothing. And the other thing that has become very prevalent for filmmakers now is the need to market and promote yourself. You've got to be doing that job, because your distributor is not going to do that for you. The distributor is not going to send the audience to YouTube or Tubi or places where you can actually make a decent amount of money back for independent film. Even Netflix now is telling filmmakers, if you don't have a TikTok, you're going to have to start a TikTok and post every day, because you've got to get the audience to watch your film on Netflix. They already paid you your money. You've got to do the work. And so if that's true, I sort of got to accept that and then find the ways to do that myself. And lucky enough, we are now in a situation in which distribution is becoming more in the hands of the filmmaker, and there are ways to platform your films in a good way. You can get your film on Apple TV as long as it's quality. There are avenues to do that yourself. Now, once it's on Apple TV, you've got to tell the audience that it's there. So that's the part that is more business, less art, but it can be art, but we just have to be on Instagram. We have to be on TikTok. We have to make YouTube videos and get ourselves out there and talk about the movie and promote the movie and go on theatrical tours and print posters and hang flyers ourselves. And that's the kind of things that I was doing. And that is just an effort to build that audience. And that is the job now of the independent filmmaker who is not backed by a studio or has a large marketing budget. And in some ways, you know, I don't want to say it's unfair. Maybe it's not right, or maybe it's too bad that there's not as much financial support for independent film as there once was. But it's also, there is a spirit there. And there is something sort of exciting about having that control and that passion, because you are the one who's going to care the most anyway. So put that fire and that passion into the job and into the work if you know how to do it. That's the other hard part too, is you also have to learn the skills. Yeah. So yeah, it's a big job. It really did. I really did learn that it was just way more than the art. But I guess, you know, I'm glad that I had some of these other jobs that were not film related, not creative related at all, that taught me that discipline of work ethic. You know, I had those hard jobs behind the counter, grilling burgers and things like that, and desk jobs that were soul sucking. But it did teach me a kind of a discipline. And so that was important in doing things for myself.
Well, I know you are a busy, creative gentleman, so this will be the last question. What does the life of Erich Cannon look like outside of filmmaking?
Very gentlemanly, very scholarly, very...
Oh, do tell, busy. Do tell.
You know, recently I have moved out and have been living in Joshua Tree, the Joshua Tree area of California. It's close enough to LA that I don't necessarily have to live in LA. And I've just fell in love with the desert, and I've just have found a new appreciation for the wilderness and nature and the stars, and just seeing, I've just got this new fascination with birds, because you just see these incredible birds out in the desert, owls in particular, and hawks. And there's something that really just gives me peace about it. And it's been really nice to just sort of get myself away from doing so much video technical, you know, kind of things, and just be outside. It's so beautiful, right?
This is real I'm looking at?
That is real. I've witnessed that with my own eyes, you know, just the colors and the sunsets and yeah, the rocks and the trees. It's like, I don't know if it's one of the seventh wonders, but it is one of the only places that these particular trees grow. And then those rocks in particular, the Mojave Desert, yeah, it's a really unique and special place. But it also gets to be like 115 degrees in the summertime.
Oh my God.
And you're sort of stuck inside until the sun goes down. But then it's a pretty beautiful night. The other thing that's cool about that area is there's a military base, and I don't always know exactly what's going on over there at that military base, but there are weird lights in the sky. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, weird lights in the sky, and that just feeds my creative soul. I've actually been writing something new recently that I would hope to shoot in the desert and in that Joshua Tree area. That would be kind of a ghost story. Um, I've witnessed some crazy things out there, and I'm like, that belongs in a movie. So maybe I should be the one that does that, you know?
Hell yeah. A very short commute to the set.
Yeah. But, you know, other than that, I always love to read. I always love to draw. I'm a big fan of music. I stopped working in the music business because I just want to enjoy music rather than work in it. So I collect physical media um, and eat a lot of cereal. I still eat a lot of cereal.
If I can't be around a box of Pops, I will eat it all.
Yeah, that's the problem. It's like I'll buy a box and then I eat the
Family
whole thing.
size.
Yeah, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. But that's Erich Cannon, a box of cereal.
Well, Eric, His Monster was a great movie. Thoroughly enjoyed it, and it has been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. And I hope that more people can go and see it in the theater. There's more opportunity coming to see it in New York and in Oregon and hopefully Los Angeles, Chicago, and more. So I'll post that kind of stuff on my website.
Awesome. Well, now that we've brought the show to a close, aside from that, is there anything else you'd like to plug or let your viewers know about?
Well, I'm appreciative you mentioned the Cuckoo Clock, which will come out in theaters this fall. And I co-produced a documentary called The Columbia River Canoe Project that also did a theatrical run. And we started selling out shows, and that's going to come out streaming this summer. And so that's something that people have been asking about, and really excited to finally put that out into the world. But Compassionate Disaster Films is my company, and I have hoped to just continue to grow and make interesting films that are compelling and emotional and have meaning in these difficult times. You know, I often ask myself, well, what can I do? What can I do about these things that trouble me? And for me, it's to try to tell stories and reach people in that way. So thank you for having me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about my work and myself. I do really appreciate it. And congratulations to you on your continued sobriety.
Absolutely. You as well, sir.
Thank you.
Well, listeners at home, all links are in the description. And Eric, thank you again for joining me.
Thank you, Vincent. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure to tune in next Tuesday for a new episode featuring the best and brightest authors and filmmakers of dark literature and film. So until then, stay healthy, stay sane, and as always, thank you for listening. See you next time.